Welcome, beautiful people. Great morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome back to another episode of Unplugged with Pam, Breakfast Club edition, brought to you by Chosen Global, where we don't just talk about growth, we walk in it each and every single day. And this morning, I missed you guys. I know y'all missed me too. But this morning, I wanted to get right into it, and I wanted to ask a question because I had to ask myself this question as I did my mid-year reset. I just came back from Barbados, having an absolutely amazing time. But one of the questions that I want to ask you is, when was the last time that you look at your life and said, how did I get here? How did I get here? Maybe financially, maybe relationally, maybe spiritually, maybe with your business, maybe in your health, maybe in your confidence, maybe in your faith, maybe in your physical habits, maybe in your personal fitness. And that was the question for me, right? I had to, because I have been beating myself up and I was just like, man, but the reality is that you got here somehow, some way. Maybe it's just a habit that you swore would never become a habit. You know what I'm talking about? And here is really what I find to be most interesting. This wasn't one Tuesday or Thursday morning that you just woke up and you said, I'm going to stop prioritizing my health. In fact, I'm going to stop prioritizing myself. I'm going to neglect my marriage. I'm going to stop praying. I'm going to stop journaling. I'm going to lose control of my finances. I'm going to be disconnected from my purpose. I'm going to lower my standard. I don't think not one of us, because I know I didn't just get up and say, hey, I want to stop. I want to do this. No, I think it just happens little by little by little. And really and truly, it starts with one compromise, one excuse, one missed commitment, one missed appointment with yourself, one boundary maybe that you moved, one conversation that you avoided, one habit that you just stopped doing. Until one day you look around and you realize, man, I'm not where I intended to be. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the drift. And I will let y'all grab a piece of paper, your cafecito, as I sip mine this morning. And here is what I find to be really the most dangerous part about drifting. Because drifting, it rarely feels dangerous while it's happening, if we're really being honest. And y'all know I'm very faith-based, and one of my favorite scriptures is Hebrews 2:1, where it says, we must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard, so that we do not drift away. And honestly, I just love the language, because it doesn't say so that we don't suddenly just run away, so that we don't suddenly just stop doing all of the things, so that we don't just suddenly rest on our laurels, rest on our values. It doesn't just say that. It says drift. Because when we're drifting, it's subtle, it's gradual, and sometimes you're drifting long before you realize that you're off course. I don't know about y'all, but here's one of the things that I realized. Number one, drift is almost gradual. And this is one of the first things that it's important for all of us to understand when we're sitting here and we're analyzing things and we're like, okay, well, how can I get better? Because it's never about beating yourself up. It's about extending grace to yourself, because we're all humans, right? We are all humans, all spiritual beings living out this human experience. And when I think of, how is it just gradual? Well, most major problems, I believe, they just start as minor tolerances. The relationship didn't just fall apart. The business, it didn't become disorganized overnight. Your office didn't become disorganized overnight. Your room, your ambiance. You didn't just wake up one day disconnected from God. overnight. It usually happens incrementally. You started doing something occasionally, then consistently, then eventually it became normal. Or sometimes you just stopped doing something occasionally. Sometimes you just stopped doing it consistently. And eventually you just forget the things that it used to matter to you. And think about how drift really happens, right? Like if we're really being honest, because this was me talking to me this weekend. And I had to really remind myself that it's important to be kind. It's important, all of these things, because sometimes it just starts off with, oh, I'll just skip it today, right? I'll just deal with that next week. And in fact, some of you are probably tuned in to today's Breakfast Club Unplugged with Pam edition, and you're like, man, we started a little late today. Well, I had a doctor's appointment, and I missed last week with you guys because I was in Barbados, and I said, man, it would have been easy for me to just be like, you know what? I'll catch up with y'all next week. I have pre-recorded episodes. I can just launch some interviews, but it was important for me to keep my commitment to my commitment. So when I say that, because I had to remind myself that sometimes when we think things and we're like, oh, I'll just do that next week. It's only one time. It I know, I usually don't tolerate this, but I'm just let it rock today, right? I'm gonna just give it a go, let it pass. And sometimes it's just you making excuses for yourself, or I'm too tired, or you know what, I'll start again on Monday. Oh, that's me in the gym. I'll start again on Monday. My routine. I'll get back to my eating habits the way that it is. I'll call them later, or you know what, I'll journal tomorrow, or I'll pray tomorrow. And honestly, you realize that these small decisions, they don't always feel consequential. And in fact, you realize that repeated small decisions create a direction. Because when you decide, you say, hey, you know what, I'm cutting off from this, I'm deciding to cut off from. But what we don't realize is that at the same time, we are what we're saying what we're saying yes to as a result of what we're saying no to. Are you saying yes to the complacency? Are you saying yes to the things that don't serve you? Are you saying yes to reverting backwards because of the things that you're saying no to, that are habits that have only been for your own good? And I realized little by little that I had gotten away, and I was very transparent about this a few episodes ago when I was like, man, I realized little by little, I just stopped journaling every morning like I normally did. I would be rushing instead of me enjoying my slow morning. I know I have a new nothing before noon law, right? It's all about pouring into myself. And if I'm serving, kicking it with y'all, it's all love. But pouring into myself, my faith, my fitness, my mental, my spiritual, my emotional, my meditation, my prayer, all of these things. And sometimes we don't neglect ourselves because we just woke up and we're like, you know what? I don't want to talk to God today. Oh, you know what? I don't want to work on my health today, knowing what my genetics look like, knowing the things that I'm battling against, knowing the trajectory that happened in my family. And when I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to be intentional about not only breaking generational curses of poverty, but I'm going to be intentional about breaking generational curses of the habits that led us to having these type of diseases, because diseases are dis-ease within your body, right? So when you think of these things, you realize you're like, man, follow up sometimes started slipping because of it. And then I remember one time my mentor told me, it's like, how you do anything is how you do everything. When you're building business, you're very new to entrepreneurship. I'm talking about 13 years ago. I was like, whatever, man. Like, it is what it is. Like, I could excel at this, and I don't necessarily need to be all the way up to par, but it's true. And when you realize that, it's important that you Be kind to yourself when you do realize that you have drifted, and maybe it's the business that you stopped maintaining. Maybe it's a routine like myself that you stopped prioritizing. Maybe it's the follow up or the follow through that began slipping. Maybe it was a relationship where communication just gradually changed because you're outgrowing one another and not everybody is growing at the same pace. And if you know, you know how that is. But one of the things that it's important, because this is one of the things also that I caught myself in, it was like something that I once did consistently just became sporadic. And it didn't happen overnight, it was just gradually. So when you start drifting, it's important for you to just say, hey, you know what? Let me not just focus on this drastic outcome. Let me focus on how subtle the beginning was. So here's my question for y'all. What's something in your life that didn't just disappear? You simply stop tending to it. You simply stop taking care of it. And when you ask yourself again, what is something in your life that didn't disappear? You simply just stop tending to it. That's important for you to just take some time, right? Take some time and ask yourself what that is. And you'll realize that a lot of the things, it didn't just disappear overnight, right? When you don't change, you're choosing. And these are things that you have to, when you're saying, hey, you know what? I want to be able to course correct myself. I want to be able to do better and be better so that not only I can show up the best and highest version of myself for me and my family and my community and all of the things and business and all of the things, but making sure that you're showing up authentically as you, but also catching yourself in those moments. Number two, what you tolerate eventually becomes normal. Y'all hear me talk about boundaries, y'all hear me talk about all of these things. And one of the things that's important is that your standards rarely disappear all at once. They move little by little. You tolerate something today that would have bothered you 2 years ago. Then you justify it, right? Because we all do it. Then we adjust to it if we're really being honest. Then here's the even worse part. Then we defend it, right? And eventually it's normal. That's drift. Think about that. And I realized this in my punctuality. It was just a standard that I was just late everywhere. Sometimes I even had to catch myself at the beginning of entrepreneurship where it was my finances because I wasn't being a good steward of my finances. Sometimes it was me tolerating how certain people were going to speak to me being a people pleaser, me running myself to the ground because I wanted to show up for everybody when really I just needed to make sure I was showing up for Pam. Maybe it's your integrity. Maybe it's what you're tolerating in your environment. Maybe it's your standards in business. Maybe it's your standards in relationships. Maybe it's your standards for yourself. And the question isn't only, is this bad? Because no. But the question more so is this beneath the standard that I said I wanted from my life? So one of the things is important for you to understand, because some of these things, they aren't really destroying you. They're simply just lowering your stock value, right? It's lowering your stock. And man, there was things that I said, you know what? This ends today. This ends today. When I talk about, one of the things you hear me talk about all the time, you know, as a coach and all these things, is our emotional triad, right? It's bit of our body, our focus, and our language. And very, very, very seldom do we even realize that very state in which we feel is dictated by our physiology and the way that we're moving our body. We tend to be depressed when we're like sitting down, when we're laying down, all these things. Well, it's easier when you're in your feelings to just stay there. And I always say feel your feelings because there's freedom on the other side of that. But just don't stay there, right? Don't stay in that space. And if there's anything that has helped me navigate grief the last 5 years, navigate grieving relationships, navigate grieving my mom, navigate grieving my uncle, navigate grieving people that I lost, navigating grieving that old version of myself as well, was realizing that, man, I needed to stop accepting things that I would have coached somebody else not to accept. And when I sat back and I looked at me and I'm like, now you would have told your niece, not even let's not even talk about a mentee or client, your sister, your niece, your goddaughter, you would have definitely been like, we're not tolerating that. Because excellence is a standard. And when you know you're the daughter of the king, me, you not entertaining peasantry. Your standards are naturally just on another level. You naturally just move different. And you know when you're entertaining what you would have coached somebody else against. So that was something for me that I had to look inward. It wasn't me looking at in the relationship I was in. It wasn't me looking at the relationships around me. It wasn't me pointing the finger, because when you get to that point that you're just like, enough is enough, you realize, man, I'm pointing one finger, three are pointing back at me. At some point, you have to change the narrative. At some point, you have to take ownership. You have to take accountability and say, you know what? That ain't on them. That's on me. I let that happen. I let that get a little too far. And it's okay, right? I'm not saying, hey, don't forgive. No, of course. But at some point, you need to remind yourself of the standard of excellence that you set for every area of your life. So my question then begins to you, because I know we've all tolerated boyfriends and girlfriends that you're like, man, I've been told my niece and nephew, kick them to the curb. I know we tolerated that in relationships. I know I have in business and all of the things. But here's one of the things that I had to ask myself, and I want to ask you today too. What have you normalized that you once said you never would normalize? And here's the thing. Don't only think about people. Think about your own behavior. Because yes, we've all tolerated boyfriends or girlfriends, or even relationships, friendships that you would have told your kids, your godchildren, your children, your family, people you love, like, we're not tolerating that. But also it's, what about your own behavior? Where have you just stopped showing up for yourself? Right? Where have you said, hey, you know what? I know that this is what saved me in this season. Why wouldn't I go back to what my anchor is? Why wouldn't I go back to what my firm foundation is? Why wouldn't I go back to the habits that are serving me? So ask yourself that for a moment. Point number 3, neglect compounds too. We're always thinking about compound interest, and you know me, love the compound effect. Yes, I'm a huge advocate about that, because we talk about compound growth, compounded habits, but neglect, it compounds too. One missed workout wasn't the problem, and is the problem. One missed deadline isn't the problem. One missed date night isn't the problem. One missed prayer isn't the problem. One missed journaling session isn't the problem. One unnecessary purchase isn't the problem. The problem is when expectations now become patterns. And you're like, wait, what do you mean by that? Well, that's when the drift actually gains momentum, if you start thinking about it, because expectations now become patterns. And here's something important. You don't usually feel the consequences of today's neglect today, right? It's like you don't feel that extra bag of gummy bears the same day. You don't feel that extra piece of chocolate cake the same day. You don't feel it that same day. You don't feel the income producing activities in your business or the products and services or for you. You don't feel it the same day. And that's why it's dangerous because we feel it later on. Some consequences, they got to delay the receipt. Yes, yes. Very much delayed the receipt. And why do I say that? Because you made the purchase 3 months ago, right? The financial pressure, it shows up later. You stopped having conversations 6 months ago. Well, the distance shows up later. You stop nurturing the customer, the community, the team. You stop nurturing the business, all of these things. Well, the lost revenue shows up later. You stop taking care of the relationship. The disconnection shows up later. That's why when we talk about mature leadership, it requires thinking beyond today's emotion, right? It's like getting past that emotion. So I remember, and I'm not even gonna bore y'all too much with my stories, but I just, I remember it was when I first embarked upon entrepreneurship. And this was just something small, right? It was just something small that it wasn't handled. It was the boundaries that weren't set. It was the conversation that I avoided because I'm like, oh, I don't wanna have conflict. I hate having to have it. And then it became such a larger problem because if you don't cut it at the root, negativity, if you don't cut it at the root, if you don't cut the lack of respect at the roots, it's like a cancer and it just spreads beyond your imagination fast because that's just how it happens. So I remember that it was something small that I consistently did that compound positively. So instead of me saying, hey, you know what? I'm not going to have these conversations because, oh my goodness, I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. I was like, well, at the end of the day, if I am going to be mentoring you, if I am going to be your coach, I have to nip it in the butt early on because you got to teach people how it is that to treat you. But it's also how you're showing up for you each and every single day because then you see it, the small things that you did. Well, oh my goodness, well now when you're working with somebody else, now the conversations are different. Now it wasn't anything to have tough conversations. In fact, we celebrated. I love having conversations now with my team of things that, hey, this went well, this didn't, because it's a growth conversation. When you get to know somebody at the heart level, when you get to know their heart posture, when you get to know who they are because of who they are, it makes things easier. So what I realized was that it wasn't so much that I didn't address things from the beginning. It was that I should have just navigated through that differently. Sometimes it's just you voicing how something makes you feel. Sometimes it's just observing. Sometimes it's, hey, you know what? I'm going to table it for the next day, not the next week, not the next month, because you want to be able to grow. And in the process, you're teaching them how to deal in leadership. You're teaching them how to coach. You're teaching them how to mentor. You're teaching them how it is to build teams. And what I realized was the drifting compounded, but the discipline compounds too. The consistency compounds too. The intentionality compounds too. Number 4, comfort can create a drift. Let me, and this is one of those that is important because drift doesn't only happen when life is bad. Let's be honest, right? Sometimes it happens when life gets good. You finally get comfortable, the business starts making money, you get the relationship, you get the opportunity, you get the audience, you reach the goal, and you're like, suddenly, you stop doing what got you there. Man, I was looking at pictures of my six-pack, and I was like, you stopped doing what got you there. So it was like, okay, well, what got me there? Well, my eating, my consistently working out, but not consistently only working out, me making sure that I'm on that treadmill on an incline, not holding on. Yes, BP, that's my trainer, by the way. Best in the bag. Shout out to Way of Life Fitness. But it's catching yourself. It's catching yourself, because this is why success requires stewardship. This is why sometimes hunger is what keeps us disciplined. Like when I thought about like how hungry I was, it happens in everything. How hungry I was in business, how hungry I was for success, how hungry I was for growth, how hungry I was for things to happen, how hungry I was to beat grief, how hungry I was to defeat disease, how hungry I was to just show up as the best version of myself so that I help somebody else. Really, how hungry I was for that. And that's why comfort makes us casual. It makes us casual, but casual can become costly. I always say, if you're casual about your dreams, they will become a casualty. So my thing is, what did you do when you were hungry that you stopped doing when you got comfortable? Did you follow up more? Did you pray more? Did you journal more? Did you prepare more? Did you network more? Did you study more? Did you work out more? Did you show up more? Did you serve more? Did you save more? Did you work on yourself more? Sometimes we don't need a new strategy. We need to remember the standard that it was that I abandoned, that you abandoned. So getting back to basics is saying, okay, you know what? I was drifting here. It's cool. I can't beat myself up. I'm not gonna spend any time doing that. But I know what that looks like. And if I did it once, I could do it again. And this is, and I'll share with you guys. This has happened so many times in business. So many times in business. So many times of when you're just completely burnt out, sometimes that you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna just take a pause from everything. And it's okay to reset and refocus and regroup. But it's also for you to realize that, okay, if the business grew, if the media opportunities increased, if the community grew, if the impact grew, if the platform grew, the win required another level of intentionality, not less. So that win, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, don't waste the win, right? It requires a new level of you. So I realized, okay, well, my business got to this. Okay, well, I want to get it to 7 figures. Okay, 6 figures. I want to get it to 7 figures. Well, this community grew to a few hundreds. Well, how can I grow that to a few thousands? Well, it's a few thousands in this country. Well, okay, I want to do it in a few thousands in that country. Well, this is what I was doing, because it's also saying, all right, what did I learn in the process that I stopped doing once I got the prize? Think about that, because sometimes it's like we think like, oh, you arrived, and it's like you rest on your laurels and you rest on the things that got you there, and you realize it's like, okay, it's now requiring a new level of intentionality of me. It's what requires the newest and best version of yourself, and it's extending grace to yourself, but it's realizing that you didn't get this far only to come this far. It's about constant and never-ending improvement. It's about also you saying, hey, you know what? That was cool for that level. That was cool for, 30-year-old Pam, 35-year-old Pam, 38-year-old Pam, 40-year-old Pam. It's gonna look a little different. She's gonna move a little different. It's gonna move with intentionality, with purpose, and it's having those boundaries and also having those honest conversations with yourself. You're not beating yourself up, but you're saying, okay, how did we get here? Because the drift, it happened gradually, but It's okay because we've all done it. So it's saying, okay, how can I get better now? And before we get into that, point number 5, distraction is one of Drift's favorite tools. Distraction. You guys have often heard me say when I talk about goal setting, I said your ability to say no will be more important than your ability to say yes. Not everything that takes our attention is bad. This is what makes distraction a little tricky though, because sometimes it's a good thing that keeps you from doing the right thing. Sometimes you can be very productive, because I've been there, and you still be distracted. It's like worry, reminding me. Sometimes you're helping everybody, but you're neglecting yourself. Sometimes you can be building the business and it's thriving and neglecting your family. Oof, I've been there so much. Sometimes you can be serving the church, serving the community. However, you're never sitting still one-on-one with God. Sometimes you can be answering everyone else's emergencies. Yeah, I've been there before, but yet never addressing your own priorities. And sometimes the drift looks like busyness. Oh, I'm just busy. I'm busy. The devil can distract you. He will keep you busy. Right? And that's where it's also, when we're talking about, you guys heard me talk about this a few weeks where, it's a capacity crisis. Like, exhaustion does not equal impact. You got to be at your highest and your best self. So there have been so many times that I had to say, hey, you know what? I can have a packed calendar, but I'm still drifting away from what matters most. It doesn't matter how much money the business is making if I'm not good. It doesn't matter how much content is popping, the impact it's having on other people, if I'm not taking care of me. So there have been so many times, even where, even recently, I've been presented with opportunities and I had to stop and ask myself and ask God, but is it my opportunity? Just because it's a great opportunity, it doesn't mean it's Pamela's opportunity. It doesn't mean it's your opportunity. I realized also I was accomplishing a lot of things, but I also realized I wasn't necessarily accomplishing things that mattered the most. And that's okay. But this is the question that I had to ask myself, and I encourage you to ask you. What is getting the best of your attention right now? And here's the follow-up question to that. And does it deserve it? So what is getting the best of your attention right now, and does it deserve it? And I'll tell you, because I am a serial entrepreneur, you guys know I curate events and retreats locally and abroad. So I build in the travel and lifestyle space. I have a coaching and consulting business. I have a podcasting business, right? Through coaching and consulting, that includes brand strategy, PR, media, marketing, all of the things. However, when you compartmentalize certain things, and you have to know, okay, this is what I'm going to prioritize in this season. This is what's going to have me at my highest and best use. That also takes you just sitting with your creator. That also takes you just sitting down with God and being like, okay, I'm serving, I'm doing all of the things, but I'm feeling drained. I'm feeling empty. And then I realized, like, oh, girl, you stopped journaling. Girl, look at your journal. You skipped the day. It was like 1, 2, skip a few. Like, girl, what you doing? You still reading your Bible, right? Y'all see me post the Bible app verse. I know so many of you are like, Pam, you posted it. Love y'all. Thank you for holding me accountable. But that's just the entry point. That's what prompts me to go open up my physical Bible and sit there with the Lord and say, hey, you know what? Now I'm going to journal. Now I'm going to meditate on the word. Now I'm going to just have some stillness, some time to just be. Okay, now I'm going to go work on my fitness. Now I'm going to go work on the things, because all of those things require you to be at your highest and best self. all of those things require you to be on your P's and Q's. But if you're not doing the things that is deserves your attention right now, you're setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up. So I had to come to realization like, okay, get back to basics and get back to taking care of you, because you can't take care of everybody else if you're not taking care of you. Point number 6, isolation makes drift harder to see. Man, I just had a conversation with one of my mentees about this, because let me tell you, this is a little different, right? Because sometimes the reason that we don't recognize our drift is because nobody can hold you accountable. It's because nobody that is actually close enough to us can challenge us. It's because you're not letting anybody in to the darkness because you're afraid of showing your soft underbelly. And I know it's so, so tough. But we also need people around us that can say, that's not like you. You've been a little different lately. You know, you said that this mattered to you, or you're settling. I think you're avoiding something. You're better than this decision. You're better than what you've tolerated. Everybody needs people around them that are your people. Everybody needs people around them who love them enough to tell them the truth. And it's not that they're trying to control you or manipulate you for their own gain. No, no, no. Those are not the people that I'm talking about that you're around you. Right? Oh, one of my friends says flattery is manipulation, and manipulation is witchcraft. So don't fall into it, right, Nick? But it's people that know your values. It's having people around you that know your character, that know your heart, that know your vision, that even know your work ethic, that know what it is that you want out of life, can hold you accountable to your highest and best version of you. Because accountability isn't punishment, it's protection. Sometimes someone else can see the drift before you do. And that's why community matters. The people that you surround yourself matters. It's interesting because a few months ago, I was talking to my trainer and I was like, oh, you know what? I wanna get a new car, and I'm tired of my car and this and that. And he was just like, and he challenged my thinking. He's like, well, are you being a good steward of it? Are you taking care of it? You told me that this little red light was on and I gave you my mechanic number and you still didn't go see the mechanic. And I'm just like, like when somebody says something that you don't want to hear. And it's like you try to ignore them, and then when you go to church on Sunday, the pastor talking about you're being a good steward of what you have to be open to what it is that you're receiving. And you're like, all right, God, you clearly want to tell me a something, and I just wasn't trying to hear it. But that's why you need people around you that know you, that also know the goals you have. And that was exactly what he said. It was like, well, I also know like what you're really trying to do in life, and I know the vision you have for not only your legacy work, for the impact and all of these things. So I think that you need to be a better steward of what you currently have. And he challenged me, corrected me. However, he reminded me of who I was. And it made me also evaluate myself. It's been so many also even moments that I can tell you with coaching, right? And mentorship, where I've seen somebody and I'm like, all right, look, I ain't going to tell you, I'm going to just give you enough rope to hang yourself, but you're going in a downward spiral. And this has been habits that I've been seeing, and these results that we were supposed to be getting here, it didn't happen, right? It's interesting because when we talk about how you do anything is how you do everything, it's sad when you also see that, when you see people that have all of this potential, that have all of this greatness, that have all of these things, and they're not getting to where it is that they need to be. And it's not because they are not capable. It's not because they're not receiving the mentorship or the coaching, but they stop showing up. They do no call, no shows. They're stop showing up to their business. They stop responding to texts. They stop responding to clients, and it just trickles down to everything you do. So it was important for us to have these conversations because I quickly was able to help them recognize that, hey, you slowly moved away from what you originally said you wanted. Like when I have contracts in place, it's not because, oh, I'm afraid that you're gonna do this. No, this for us to hold each other accountable to, hey, this is what you said you wanted, and this is what's required. These are the performance metrics. These are the things that need to be done. These are the KPIs, the key performance indicators. These are the things that are going to move the needle in the direction that it is you said you wanted. Point number 7, course correction requires honesty. It does. Here's the good news. Drift isn't your destiny. Just because you moved off course, it doesn't mean that you can't come back. But you cannot correct what you refuse to confront. So if course correction always begins with honesty, it's important for you to realize I'm talking about honesty, not shame, not pretending, not blaming, not any of those things. Honesty. Hey, where am I? How did I get here? Where did I stop paying attention? What do I need to return to? What do I need to pay attention to? What does that look like? You know, one of my favorite proverbs, Proverbs 4:26, it says, give careful thoughts. Give careful thought to the path for your feet, and steadfast in all of your ways. It doesn't say like don't care about what you're doing. No. Give careful thought. Examine, pay attention. Because leadership requires you to lead your ship. And that leadership requires evaluation. So here's what I did. And I'm encouraging you to do the same. Do a drift audit. And this is where I tell you, just be kind to yourself when you're doing this. Get your notebook, right? Get your notebook or get your pen and paper, get your notes on your app, all of the things. Don't rate these areas from 1 to 10, right? Don't rate them on 1 to 10 on where it is that you want to be. Rate them where you actually are. So in your faith, am I connected spiritually as I want to be? In your relationships, am I tending to the people that I say that actually matter most? This is what I had to recently do. In your finances, are my financial behaviors aligned with my financial goals? Health and personal stewardship. Am I taking care of the person responsible for carrying my calling? Am I taking care of the person responsible for carrying my calling? In your career or your business or your purpose? Very simple. Am I moving intentionally? Am I moving intentionally, or am I just operating on autopilot? Am I just on cruise control right now? Your character. Are these compromises justifiable, or are there compromises I've just started justifying? In your joy, am I building a life I actually enjoy living? By the way, you should be traveling. If you're not, you need to talk to your girl because we need to travel more. Okay, I'm just saying. Your lowest score doesn't need your shame. Okay, when you rate these on 1 to 10, remember, your lowest score doesn't need your shame. It needs your attention. It just needs your attention so we can course correct. So how do we stop the drift? Number 1, notice it. Right? These are exercises that we talk about, little things like notice it, because you can't correct the drift you don't recognize. And ask, okay, where have I moved away from the things that matter? So number 1, notice it. Number 2, name it. Be specific. This is not the time to like dibble and dabble, lollygag, no, dilly-dallying, all of the things. Like, be specific. Not, oh, my life is a mess. Instead, be specific. I've stopped managing my money. I've stopped showing up for my workouts. I've stopped being present in my marriage or in my relationships, in my business. I haven't followed up in my business the way that I should. I haven't prioritized this. I've neglected my spiritual life. I've neglected my fitness. Specific problems can be addressed. Vague shame cannot. And it's not about you or I being the victims here, because we're victors. We are already victorious. It's just walking in that. Number 3, find the first degree. And now you're like, wait, what do you mean? Finding the first degree. So don't only ask where you are today. Ask yourself also, where did this begin? What decision, what boundary, what habit, what season, what excuse? Dig deep to find the actual origin. Like, when did it start? Because it didn't happen overnight. Number 4, return to your anchors. What keeps you grounded? Prayer, Bible reading, journaling, routine, community, fitness, your calendar, having a budget, again, exercising, accountability, your family, resting, resetting, recovering, whatever it is, your anchors are, use them. Number 5, last but certainly not least, make one correction today. Not 37, not 6 or 7, just one. Send the text, make the appointment, open the spreadsheet, open the calendar, have the conversation, block the calendar, cancel the thing, restart and restore the routine that was serving you. Pray, apologize, say no, start again. Course correction doesn't require perfection. It requires movement. It's never been about perfection or performance. It's about progress. Last but certainly and not least, most people, they don't lose their way because they're choosing the wrong destination. They lose their way because really and truly, we just stop paying attention to the direction. And that's what I really want you to hear today more than anything. Maybe you haven't destroyed anything. Maybe you're just simply drifting. Maybe your business isn't broken. Maybe your marriage isn't broken. Maybe the relationships isn't broken. Maybe it just needs your attention. Maybe the company or the vision isn't failing. Maybe your faith isn't gone. You've just gotten distracted. You just got distant. Maybe your dream isn't dead. You just stop tending to it. Maybe you don't need to start your entire life over. Maybe you just need a course correction. And you can do that today. Not next year, not next month, not January 1st, not Monday. Today, hoy, ahora, hoy mismo. Because the small compromises can move you away from the life that it is that you want, from the life that it is that you truly deserve. But small corrections, just small ones, can actually move you back to it. So pay attention, check your direction, restore your standards, reconnect with your anchors, have the conversations, make the adjustment, and don't wait until you're miles away from yourself to admit that you moved. So before we leave today, write those things down that I told you. But remember, ask yourself, where am I drifting? What did I stop doing that I need to return to? And just what's one correction I can make today? And then just do it. Just one. Start with one. Because awareness without action is just information. Yeah. So when we talk about, we don't just talk about growth here, we walk in it, because these are things for practical, that may seem very practical, but it makes a big, big deal. So thank you. Breakfast has been served. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Unplugged with Pam, Breakfast Club edition, brought to you by Chosen Global, where we don't just talk about growth, we walk in it. And next time, pay attention to what you're paying attention to. Stay committed to your commitments. Make sure you guys are following us across all platforms, from Buzzsprout to Apple to YouTube. Follow, like, and subscribe. And of course, share because you care. Love you. Have a great day. God bless.